recessed hearings on KCT 3-17. We'll pick up where we left off after we do roll call.
Roll call, Michael Cornell.
Here.
James Blackard.
Here.
Richard Kiefer. Here. Richard Runyon. William Flott.
Yes.
Gerald Earring.
Yes.
Joan Huesman.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have an agenda for tonight or minutes or anything, so we can jump right back into where we were, which I believe we had some questions from Mike still on the table. You may need to refresh my memory just a little bit on where you were and how you wanted to pick back up and proceed.
First thing, let me ask a procedural question, just so I'm clear.
Okay.
I understand that Chuck is our secretary, but in this instance, he's also acting as a witness. I believe there's a conflict that exists that we should probably look to address. He prepares the minutes for these meetings associated.
Well, are you preparing minutes for these?
I will be involved in the process later.
Okay.
Are you suggesting that there be a separate secretary appointed?
I believe we were left with no option.
Could that be somebody else from the county?
Procedurally, it needs to be somebody else that obviously we approve.
Well, I guess.
Because the rules don't address the secretary pro tem.
Sure, but generally, the zoning administrator simply presents the case and provides facts, not opinion, which he has extended opinion within this case. So now he's acting as a secretary, prepares minutes which may be biased to his opinion to present to us for affirmation.
Of course, you ultimately approve whatever's submitted, and if you find something to be inappropriate, it can be changed.
So we're expected to go through with a fine-tooth comb on these and...
Not necessarily, I'm just commenting.
Right, I understand.
You're raising something, of course, we've never had to deal with anything like this before.
But we haven't had this situation. I think as Chuck has progressed from his role, generally as a zoning administrator, to now a witness, I think we've crossed a whole different line that we need to sort through.
Well, as far as keeping track in minutes, we could probably have another. My first thought would be to use Alina Hartley. She's here.
It has to be proved. I mean, obviously, we have to.
If she's willing to do it.
Well, she's still a county employee.
Yeah, but she's not a witness. That's his concern.
Will she present any testimony during this situation?
No.
During this case? He's changed roles significantly by presenting testimony. Generally, he presents simply facts, dispels the facts to us, and then takes notes as we progress.
I agree. I guess that'd be a question for you guys. Why Chuck and not someone else that's on the Ag and Zoning Committee or that actually drafted the document?
Well, and I appreciate the comments, but a lot of his opinions are now coming from questions from the Zoning Board of Appeals and asking him about his specific opinions. So what I'm looking at is we introduced various exhibits based on the factual information contained in them. I was not asking him his professional opinion, just simply the facts of the documents. If you want to continue down these lines of questionings, which I certainly will be more prone to closely watching and objecting based on professional opinions and things like that. I was here simply not to overturn the card of what your procedures were. You as a board, I respect your ability to question those that you feel, but again, we felt Chuck was the most qualified witness to introduce that evidence.
I'm kind of new at this. Can I ask a question? The first meetings that you had at this, at the down at Prairie Central,
No, those are different, those were for an actual wind farm project, this is for a text amendment regarding the
Okay,
ordinance.
okay, I didn't know if he did the same situation in there, or I didn't, that's where I was coming from.
He acted as secretary, but he never presented information like he has.
Okay.
Nor took questioning, which anyone that presents testimony we're allowed to cross-examine by the rules.
And the hearing in February was for the wind farm siting hearing, and it was a court reporter taking everything down.
Oh, okay.
But for text amendments like this, the ZBA rules say that the secretary is Chuck, the zoning administrator. He's supposed to keep notes. He doesn't have to record everything, but he's supposed to keep minutes of the meeting, report those back. And I guess the question, he's raising the question as to whether or not there's a conflict or not. And ultimately, I mean, you have a right to review the minutes. My take on it is that it's not a conflict, but if it's decided that there is, then my suggestion is that we use Alina, because she's here and she can do it. Unless, because I don't perceive that any other members of the ZBA are in a position to really do it.
Correct. And I guess I would further comment as we welcome a new member and we're trying to bring him up to speed, what have we presented to him? Anything that we've possibly presented to him to bring him up to speed has come from what the county has presented as an expert witness. He hasn't been privy to any of the previous meetings, nor has there been any minutes approved for those meetings.
But that's not unusual for members to miss meetings, and they have the opportunity to look at the minutes that were taken and the exhibits to get themselves up to snuff.
Agreed, but there's no minutes been approved.
Not yet,
Correct.
Or prepared.
Nor prepared.
right? Because we're at the beginning of the hearing.
We're 5.5 hours in.
I know, but we've only got one witness. Right?
There has been testimony.
We have Mr.
Yeah.
Bolt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I see this as a procedural matter for the ZBA.
All right, well, I agree with you, Mike, that it does feel, at least with me, I'm conflicted of, Chuck is usually kind of leading some of our meetings here, and been involved with ag and zoning as well, I believe, or at least at those meetings. It's unusual, in my opinion, to have the zoning administrator be a witness and provide testimony for a text amendment, or for any, I guess, zoning case. So if it's left up to the ZBA, I guess we need to discuss how we all feel about it, and do we want to take the time and make the effort to review the minutes. We may have to review the minutes in detail on our own time, unless we want to just sit here and do it together, on the record at another hearing. And that would be the way I'd prefer to do it if we're going to go that route and leave Chuck in the role that he's been in so far, and that we have to go through the minutes with a fine-tooth comb.
So would it be just a portion of the minutes that Chuck is giving testimony?
I don't know how we pull it out as far as separate it. I think we just have to go through them from beginning to end. We probably have to have the tapes available to make sure that our memories are correct and accurate, and that what's recorded is what is being put into writing.
Our memories, or at least my memory, will not be real accurate, I can assure you.
And mine won't either. So we'll have to have the tapes. We'll probably have to listen. We'll need to review that. I think to dispel any kind of concern about any slant in any of the minutes that are made.
Okay, now, Mike, do you perceive that this conflict lasts beyond Chuck's testimony? What about subsequent witnesses? Is he able, from where you said, is he able to continue in his function as secretary for other witnesses?
No. That's my perception. I feel that once once he's established the bias or presented any opinion, the bias exists, and any subsequent minutes can be spun to the bias.
I think Chuck's a professional. I think he could handle that pretty well. His testimony is about done, I think. So I think it's much ado about nothing.
Okay, anybody else from the zoning board want to weigh in on what you think?
I guess I'm not in favor of going through the minutes, so if that's gonna be a concern to the board, if we have somebody take the minutes while Chuck is testifying, but I see no reason why he can't continue then after that.
Agreed.
That'd be my take.
Have you all read our minutes for meetings? I mean, they don't necessarily just go point by speaker by speaker by speaker. It's a summary. So anyone that's going to summarize is Chuck's testimony might be interspersed. It just in the flow. I don't know, because I don't know how they're gonna end up being written, but from the minutes that I read every month, and again, my memory may not be perfect on this, but it isn't, Joan said this, Mike said this, it's the summary.
It's the general.
It's the general, so, you know, where one picks up and takes, and where one stops, it may not be real clear. So if we're gonna review the minutes, we're gonna review all minutes, or I just don't see how else we make it work.
But if you have someone take the minutes during his testimony, doesn't that suffice? I mean, is that, would that
There's
meet
no
your
one,
concern?
Chuck's not really sitting there, I don't know, Chuck, what you do during the meetings, you go back over the tapes is how I understand it, and that's how you prepare the minutes.
So those tapes would be available to another party.
Right.
I use my notes and I use the tapes both. They're generally in chronological order during the order of the meeting. Who testifies when, it's said, I don't name names. We need to get into detail of names that could probably be done.
Okay. I guess if we're gonna change horses, I'd just rather do it somewhat, if Lena's gonna be the one to take minutes, I'd rather just do Alina going forward. Not jumping back and forth, not keeping track of who's doing what and at what time and who's saying what. If we switch going forward. That would be my recommendation, and then we go through the minutes like we always do. We don't necessarily have to go through them with a fine tooth comb, but we always have the opportunity to review them.
Right. Is that acceptable to the county?
Certainly defer to procedural questions to the board and its council. I tend to agree that Chuck is a consummate professional and will do a good job, but I don't have a vote on this, say.
All right, are we already opening up to everybody in there? I mean, this is discussion amongst the zoning board.
It's actually zoning board, yeah. But the question, he is the county board chairman, and I just want to make sure that it's all right to, I don't have authority to authorize Alina to do this. I believe that she can do it based on my prior experience with her. I just want to, address the issue and move on, get going.
Okay, did you want to ask Bob that, or can I address this question?
I think it's up to you to address the question, if the county is amenable to this change of procedure. Because I don't think there's any members of the ZBA who are in a position to do this. And I don't know anybody else. And I know Alina takes minutes for many different meetings, so I have confidence in her ability to take things down accurately.
Okay, Bob, what were you gonna ask?
Yeah, thank you. I kind of want to echo Mr. Flock's opinion that I think Chuck is a professional when it comes to this. He has the experience of writing the minutes from your ZBA meetings that you have had in the past year, asking Alina tonight to be prepared to start taking minutes when she has not in any way had that on her plate I think that's asking a lot of Alina to come in here and all of a sudden be thrust into the role of being the recording secretary. I mean, I don't see a problem with it, because anytime you have minutes, whether it's any of our committee meetings, people say things, we ask Chuck's opinion, we look at the minutes before we approve them and decipher from those, and I think you do the same thing, maybe more especially careful if it's Chuck's comments that you're concerned about, make sure he wrote them right. But I just don't think it's fair to anybody. Chuck, I don't think it's fair to. He's never been asked to step down. He is our zoning person that we have, and that's what he's hired to do. I'd like to see him be able to continue to operate as we have set up. And I don't think it's fair to ask someone else at the spur of the moment to come on board and do that for you. I mean, maybe we could have hired somebody that could come in and take shorthand if that was what you wanted. We have never heard of this until Mr. Cornally just brought it up.
Yep, it wasn't raised when you started these proceedings either, so.
I would say that in no other situation has Chuck ever presented evidence and opinion. That's the difference. And it wasn't until last meeting that he started to present his opinion.
Well, and when we opened this, I did ask the question of Chuck, because Chuck went into a lot more detail when we opened the case and gave the overview, and I asked, are you presenting this as, there was a specific exhibit that was gonna be handed around, and I asked at that point in time. So the answer at that point in time was no, then we changed, and Mr. Holt was the one leading being the lead, I guess, witness to testify. And then it did change to Chuck, so, my personal opinion is I'm comfortable with Chuck still taking the minutes and providing testimony, and we will go through the minutes in detail, and we'll take time in meetings to do that. And if we need to, we'll have to have the tapes available. That would be the if we're gonna leave Chuck where he's at and not impose upon Alina and not ask Chuck to step down, although I think it'd be a weight off of Chuck right now to have someone else take minutes, and maybe it's a much needed break. But if we're gonna have Chuck continue on, then I would require us as a zoning board to review them together, review the minutes in detail together, and maybe there won't be an issue, but if there is, then it will be dispelled.
And is that your ruling then?
I want the rest of the zoning board to be comfortable with this, because we all sit here and just take the flag.
Does the minutes, is it gonna influence our decision on what we recommend?
Well, you would have an opportunity.
I believe at this point, certainly, a new member would review the minutes. That's the only testimony that they may have.
Well, certainly.
For those that haven't been here for all the nights or whatever the case, I mean, the minutes are your record if you're absent.
Right.
Well, you would have an opportunity to review the minutes, and if there was a question or concern about the way they were presented, you could discuss and make a decision as a board, which is what I understand you just said was the way to do it.
That's a position I would be comfortable with. Leaving Chuck where he's at, I would be comfortable with that.
Am I the only new one?
It's obvious Alina is not interested in doing that.
Oh, this,
For the start, yeah.
Yes, but was everybody here at the last one and the previous? I'm not sure.
everybody,
Well,
you weren't the previous, right? Last one you were, but not the previous.
I don't believe I've missed one of these rooms.
the text amendment.
Text amendment rooms.
So you'd be the one.
Let's get started.
Well, I thank you.
How do you feel?
How do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
I'll catch up.
But if the minutes aren't
I understand what
accurately
you're saying.
depicted,
I understand what you're saying, but if we're gonna go through the minutes, I'm comfortable because I can ask you guys that have been here any questions, right? Okay.
Richard?
Apologize for coming in late tonight, and I had another meeting, but I was I kind of missed out what this question is it, what is it about his opinion?
Well, Chuck's testifying as a witness, which he typically, or he's never done,
Right.
just as far as long as I've been on the board, but he also takes the minutes as zoning administrator. He seemed to step back over to a different role when he testifies. So the fact that he's testifying in support of the text amendment and then also preparing the minutes or just in general being in control of a lot of the documents that flow out of the zoning office, then is there a conflict? Do you feel there's a conflict, and do you feel if there is, our review of the minutes, as I suggested, are you comfortable with that? Does that cover it? Or would you rather have someone else take the minutes and act as zoning administrator in the meetings?
I think there probably is a conflict, but I'm still confident that we could probably go over the minutes and make sure that,
Okay.
yeah. We know.
And then when Bill stands,
I'd be okay with it.
okay.
We'll have to go over the minutes.
I'm comfortable with what we're doing already, and if we've got a problem, just what you said, we've got the tapes. So whatever these minutes say, it's gotta be covered from that anyway, correct?
Yeah, you're just gonna take your time to review this too.
Well, we just have to do it.
Okay.
I mean, if we take the time now to ask somebody to do this, what do? Start over? We don't wanna do
No,
that.
I don't, he's
No,
not
the
asking.
suggestion would not be that. The tape does exist at this point for whomever
Right.
the new person may be to take the minutes from the tape and then continue forward
But then,
with the current minutes.
what are you losing tonight? You all said you gotta quit tonight, and this person's gonna get telling them they gotta do this job, which I don't know who this person is over here, but,
They're talking about moving tonight.
yeah, we don't wanna lose where we're at tonight and keep going.
You know, we need to make a decision.
Yes.
Are you comfortable with that one?
I believe Chuck is a professional. I believe the conflict exists. I don't think that you can act in dual roles. I understand if we decide to go through the minutes, it's going to be a lengthy process going through those minutes. I think that you guys in the end will wish that we had done someone else to take the minutes, but
Threat.
Yep, for the record, then I do believe there's a conflict, but I'm
There's a
comfortable
threat.
with Chuck continuing. We have to review them in detail. It's gonna take more time. Okay?
Right?
All right. So with that, we're in the middle of Mike, you asking Chuck some questions.
Right.
Are you prepared to pick
I,
up?
I also have a procedural question.
Okay.
Mike just said we couldn't be here in dual roles, yet he presented testimony and an exhibit. So I think maybe he might be in two roles here also.
What exhibit did he present?
I don't know, we never got a copy of it. It was presented as an exhibit of this committee.
First exhibit, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, was the Livingston County Comprehensive Plan year 2020 update.
Correct.
And you asked one question,
I did.
and you're done with that, right?
Was it asked and answered? Was it asked? Was it answered?
I believe it was.
I believe it was deferred possibly. Okay.
Okay, all
In
right.
any case, it was the question associated with anywhere within the comprehensive plan, does it allude to the fact that a vote or a referendum action could change zoning practices?
And then his answer is no, it does not reflect that, that comprehensive plan does not reflect
That was
that.
my,
Okay,
that's
okay.
my
Yes.
recollection.
Okay.
And then the second,
Well, are you providing that document? I mean, Mike asked a question about it. He didn't present it as
I
an
marked-
It was marked Exhibit 1.
I marked, and I have it marked as ZBA exhibit, or marked as exhibit 1, because I'm not, again, we're in
Correct.
territory.
And that exhibit was, call it presented. However, in the first meeting, Chuck drew upon an exhibit, and he specifically said, this has been presented many times previously in WindFarm hearings. At that point, it allowed all testimony from previous WindFarm hearings to be allowed within this case, within these hearings. Absolutely it did.
No, it doesn't. He what was presented were two exhibits that he reviewed from prior hearings, and they were very limited in the reason they were presented. Exhibit number 10, exhibit number 11 from Nordex was from the Pleasant Ridge hearing and had to do with following turbine parts, recommending a 500-meter radius. And then the second exhibit were tower base dimensions from the application file by Energy. And that's it. And in my opinion, those don't open the door to the entire thing. And if you want to ask questions about those exhibits, it's appropriate.
You've allowed those. And actually the one that was in
I'm
question.
gonna withdraw my comment so that we can move on.
The soil survey was the one in particular.
The soil survey was not part of it, was not presented as an exhibit from a prior hearing. It was just simply the Livingston County soil survey.
It was an exhibit in prior hearing, but I did not use it that way. I took it as a separate document to keep that.
And at that point, I would ask to review the tapes on that. But I do agree, we should get moving. I mean, I think that,
And I think, again, my opinion is and will continue to be that to go beyond what these exhibits deal with is inappropriate, not inappropriate, but the typical objection is it's beyond the scope of direct examination. You can question him on what he testified to, but that doesn't give you carte blanche to go into every aspect of the prior hearing, which and especially a wind farm hearing, which I find to be irrelevant also to a hearing involving a text amendment.
I would disagree on that. The scope obviously considers several of the same things that we must consider as a zoning body. Detriment to health, detriment to property values.
Well, I don't see property values were not part of the last text amendment hearing. I don't see them as part of this particular hearing either. We're talking about a text amendment. We're not doing a wind farm siting hearing.
Agreed. However, property values from testimony, from evidence, diminishes as the proximity to wind towers decreases.
But again, I don't see that. That's an issue for a wind farm hearing, not for a text amendment.
The entire premise of these conversations is
because
to...
all we're doing here is we already have an existing ordinance that deals with wind farms. Now, what we are talking about in this hearing is changing that ordinance as to 7 separate townships, and not going through the propriety of everything you consider in a wind farm hearing. So I don't.
Let him finish now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What his question and issue was.
The townships associated, you're changing very specific setbacks within those townships.
Right.
Which can prove or disprove to have a negative effect on people's welfare, property value, all those special use conditions, and things that a zoning body must consider before making an amendment to the overall plan.
Appropriate for the ZBA to consider at a hearing on a wind farm, not appropriate to consider when we're talking about a text amendment. It's much too broad. I mean, you get into the issue of property value guarantee in a wind farm hearing, okay? Not in a text amendment.
No, because at this point you're disallowing it. At this point you're disallowing anything in the proximity as close as 1,600 feet to be a permitted use. Which we can find a large quantity of testimony exists that would say that a turbine within 1,600 feet has multiple.
Well, I guess, okay, let me say this. You've used the word conflict, okay? Bill raised the issue too, all right? I understand where you're coming from, but it is, I think, inappropriate for a ZBA member to take a position. You're supposed to be like a judge in a court, listening to the evidence and making a decision, and not presenting evidence that goes beyond the scope. Now, as a citizen of the county, you are have every right to be out in the audience and an objector and making a presentation of evidence at that time.
Okay, I thought the question on the table was, if one exhibit from a prior hearing comes in, does that bring them all in? I thought that's where we started, and now we've morphed into a different issue that you want to bring to Mike's attention.
Well,
So let's take that question under advisement. I don't know the answer. I'll do the research to figure it out. If bringing in one exhibit from a prior hearing could potentially bring in all, then whatever question you have regarding any of those exhibits can be on the table or not on the table, depending on what we figure out. So your questioning on that's probably gonna have to wait.
That's fine.
Okay. Now, are you concerned that Mike's trying to enter exhibits into evidence?
yes, I have a concern in.
Okay. The comprehensive plan, I don't know that anyone, because Mike asked a question about it, doesn't mean the ZBA is asking for it to be an exhibit. So, why is that labeled as ZBA, why did you label it as ZBA Exhibit 1?
For identification purposes, because I thought it was appropriate to have it properly identified.
Okay,
And I didn't, you're right, I didn't know how else to do it except ZBA. And I didn't want to label it Cornell Exhibit number 1, because he's on the board and it's not appropriate for him to be presenting it.
it's a question about our county, a comprehensive plan that Chuck could answer, and it fits with how we wanna amend the text. Does it have to be an exhibit? I don't think that it has to be an exhibit.
That document should be part of our deliberations, not part of the hearing.
It just should be a document that anybody on the ZBA can have if they
Right.
want it, and if you aren't familiar with it, I haven't read it cover to cover. If you have a question on it, you should be able to have it if you want it. It doesn't have to be an exhibit to the hearing. I mean, just like the text, the ordinance, I carry it around in my bag. It's not gonna be entered into, as an exhibit into evidence, but it's something I can review if I need to.
And maybe the way to address it, it's a county exhibit, more than probably, that it was brought up by Mike as a ZBA member.
I don't want that to be entered as ZBA Exhibit 1 or Cornell Exhibit 1.
Okay.
It's Livingston County's comprehensive plan. If somebody on the ZBA has a question about it and Chuck can answer it, I don't know that it needs, did you ask for it to be entered as an exhibit?
No, I
Am
simply had a
forgetting
question from
that?
it.
Okay.
I'm the one that raised the issue for identification purposes about documents, so that they are.
It's the Livingston County comprehensive plan.
Okay, that's fine, I just want to make sure the issue got addressed, so.
Are there more than one? Is there more than one comprehensive plan?
No, nothing.
Anyone on the ZBA have a problem with that? I don't see why we would enter that as an exhibit.
I thought that was what we were guided by with all of our meetings.
Right. Yeah, it's a tool we can use.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be an exhibit.
So,
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
What other exhibit are you concerned about regarding Mike?
There was a property value guarantee report from Pleasant Ridge, hearing, involving property values.
Okay, so that's gonna be part of the question of if one is entered, does it bring in all? And if the answer is no, then that one will not, that will not be entered, and while you may have a question, you can't reference, we may not be able to reference it, so we'll figure that out for a future meeting so that we can get moving with this one.
Okay.
Does that work for you people? DBA members? Okay.
What, I have a question. You talked about, previous hearings, how far are we going back when we talked about it can't be made? Because we outlined this and we sent it to the county board, we can go back to that we studied that before we put
I'll
our.
look into that as well, the prior text amendment hearings and the
Yeah.
evidence that was presented there, because we based our decision on the evidence that was presented there, and now it's coming, but now the same ordinance that we just revised is right back in front of us to be reviewed for a different, for these various other reasons. So I'm gonna review that as part of the, the hearing process. From whatever Chuck presented from the WindFarm hearing, if that brings in all the exhibits from that hearing, we'll answer that question. And I will figure out and find out, and make sure that it's okay that we can take into consideration the evidence presented at the prior text amendment hearings. So, to be decided yet. Okay?
Okay.
I would have a follow-up question on that, where investigating that, if that does occur, to allow them in, would that allow us to go back in and bring some others in also?
Which ones? Which, are you
I
talking
mean,
about wind farm hearings?
it'd be kind of rebuttal issues when
Are you talking about the wind farm hearing documents or prior text amendment? They may be different, they may be different.
I can't answer if
Answers.
you're allow or not allow.
The question is, if you open the door, you can't.
How far do you
One
open the
side,
door?
you've got to let the other side do the same thing. I think that's what he's saying.
Oh, sure, yeah. I guess I just assumed that.
Okay.
Are we down with procedure or anybody else? All right. Mike, you were in the middle of questioning. Was it on the
That's
property
on hold.
value? That's on hold.
That's on hold.
Alright. Anyone else on the zoning board can ask questions of Chuck with regard to his testimony. If we need to take a step back and refresh our memories on what Chuck had testified to, we can ask Chuck to do that. I'm not sure if anyone else is prepared with questions. I've got to review some of the documents in front of me in order to make sure I'm clear on what Chuck testified to.
Is
Any
Chuck-
questions that I've had?
Is Chuck done testifying then?
Depends on whether, no, we're in he's done testifying.
He's done.
We're in
With his
cross-examination.
testimony, we're in-
And we're at the first part of cross-examination is where the ZBA members ask questions.
Right.
And
We're gonna
if there are no more ZBA members, then we move on to units of local governments.
Before we go on, could somebody state succinctly exactly what the word text amendment that we're looking at? What's the question in
Which
front of
text
us?
amendment we're looking at?
What is the question in front of us? I know it's in the packet, and I'm reading as fast as I
I
can.
understand that.
Okay.
It is.
Let me try to point you to the, make sure I got the right document.
I'm sorry.
I understand.
Yeah.
There's several things in there that you don't want to change.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have something that starts off with the report on the front page?
Yes.
And then attached to it, County Exhibit 1, and then attached to it is the text sections that, with the
Okay.
proposed amendments, and they're in green.
Okay.
It's marked case number ZT3-17.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That answers your question? Okay. Chuck, have we let you finish, or did we interrupt you with questions?
I believe we're correct. Mike and I were gonna work on the Donnie studies and property values.
We were in cross-examination.
Yes.
You had finished your presentation.
You finished, okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I know sometimes we stop and ask you questions in the middle. All right, anyone from the zoning board with questions of Chuck on his testimony? And we can stop and ask questions at any point in time, so if you're not ready with the question now, we can open it up to the interested parties and objectors, and then we can come back with questions at a later point in time if we want to, if we need to. All right, let's move on to interested parties or objectors.
First would be units of local government, including school districts.
Okay. Anyone from a school district with questions of Chuck?
I don't have a question.
Units of local government, other units of local government? Okay, anyone represented by an attorney? Questions of Chuck? All right, Mr. McCann.
I'm not gonna be very long, Chuck, but at the last hearing, you discussed ways to build wind turbines under the current ordinance. And Mr. Holt mentioned ways to build in Reading, I think that's how you say it, I'm not sure. One way is also to obtain a waiver from the nearby property owners, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So another way would also be to file a variance along with the special use, would that be true? You can file a variance along with the special use application, correct?
Yeah, there's,
I mean, if it was 3,200 feet or 1,600 feet or whatever, I could ask for a variance to go down to 3,000 feet.
we have not done that before, but that is probably an open opportunity sometime.
I mean, that's allowable under the ordinance.
Right.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to get to. So wind turbine developers would have at least legal ways under the ordinance to reduce the setbacks, correct?
Correct.
Okay. To your knowledge, have any Vestas wind turbines been built in Livingston County?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Can you look at County Exhibit number 1? That's the text amendment language. And I have to admit, that I had some of the same confusion I think others had on this language. If you go to section 56, 692, the procedures, this is really the hearing facility page. You know what? It's a good question, Joe. Mine isn't numbered. It's the hearing facilitators, the hearing facilitator language and the procedures.
Okay, I gotcha.
Okay. I have to be honest with you, I thought this language was there to allow a hearing facilitator in any situation the county board thought necessary, and you testified that's not what you intended, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I guess what I would just ask, and I understand you're not a lawyer, and I'm not sure this is the time to do it, but I guess I've kind of looked at this and thought of ways to make this a lot cleaner, because the way I keep reading it, the exact opposite of how you mean it. I think if the word accept was after the word systems, for special use applications pertaining to, just, I mean, a hearing facilitator, except the hearing facilitator may preside over hearings resulting from the citing approval application. I think that cleans up the concern that I think a lot of us had when we saw it, just like you would consider that at some point in the future. You've read a copy of the AG opinion that was related to zoning for wind turbines that was sent back to Livingston County back, I think, in the fall of 2016.
You already read it?
You've seen it, right?
I've seen it.
Yeah, okay.
Were we introducing that into evidence, counsel?
I don't care. But right now, I just want to understand his understanding of it. If we want to, I can introduce it later.
Okay.
After reading that opinion, would you agree that you cannot base a zoning change strictly based on, it's a two-part question. One, you can't change a zoning, can't base a zoning change strictly based on referendum results. And two, you are not doing that here. That's not, you're not relying strictly on the referendum results for this, correct?
To answer the second part, that's correct. And that's not strictly on the referendum results. And I don't know, I read it, but I can't specifically sit here and tell you.
Okay, but that's not the basis for the change that you are requesting, it's strictly on the
It's
referendum.
not strictly the basis for the changes, the whole wide range of them.
That's what I have, Mr. Schultz. We will have some short evidence when the time is right, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other party represented by an attorney? Any interested parties not represented by an attorney with questions of Mr. Schultz?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, could you please state your name for the record?
Mike Machete. I live at 1900 East, 3100 North in Odell, Nevada Township. And I want to know how the condition of crops and soil changed the protection of the setback from 32 to 1600 feet. How does that change anything? Can anyone answer that for me?
This question is directed to Mr. Show.
To the board?
No,
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 it's
that's
not
not,
for the
Chuck?
board.
Chuck,
Yeah, how does that change my safety? You have a 3,200 foot setback, and now because of soil and crops, all of a sudden, I'm safer, and you can put them 1,600 feet away from my home?
The discussion in soil and crops wasn't necessarily a safety factor in doing it, it was just a factor
Well,
to
how does-
consider in regards to that.
How are you basing this argument? On what facts? For safety. Safety is first, the people's safety is first, not someone's pocketbook.
In particular, in this particular case, we did have the exhibit from the Nordex turbine in which they had a safety figure in there for 500 meters. So that's being based on something that's been put in.
But you guys came up with a
regards to-
limit of 3,200 feet. based on evidence from a prior case for the whole county. Now we have some wham bam, thank you ma'am, vote in 7 counties, and you're gonna surround my house 1,600 feet away with wind turbines?
I don't hear a question pending.
Well, I wanna know, how are you basing your argument here on the safety part of it? You're not considering safety? Are you not considering safety when you make these recommendations?
Safety is being considered, yes.
It is being considered. So now because of the condition of the soil and the crops are it's not as good as the other part of the county, that's your argument for moving the wind turbine closer to my home? And so that increases the safety, does it or doesn't it?
I feel this has been asked and answered, and the exhibits demonstrate.
Right.
I'll be prepared next time to have testimony. We'll have more meetings, right?
We are gonna have more meetings. If you're
Okay.
interested in
I'll be more prepared next time. Thank you.
Okay, this is your opportunity though to ask Mr. Show, so.
Well, I want to know what the difference, no one's answering the question. The question is simple. You're basing things based on crop condition and the soil, and now you want a referendum to move it 1,600 feet setback versus what you originally came up with for the whole county of 3,200 feet,
Okay.
which I was happy with.
Okay,
I thought you took that, you didn't come to that decision lightly.
right,
I mean, that took a lot of time and a lot of work.
right.
And now we have 7 counties, or whatever, voting, and, we only lost in Nevada by 8 or 10 votes, I
Okay,
mean.
why don't you, come back with, it's an opportunity that you can present evidence and
I will.
any exhibit that you'd like, because
I will.
Chuck did answer your question,
Okay, that's good,
yeah, and,
because I'm real curious, I want that answer.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other interested parties? Okay?
Yes, ma'am, Tom Colasset, reside at 27575 East, 3000 North, White Township. Mr. Shoup, this new safety factor, was this brought in by a manufacturer or a wind turbine company or energy company that came up with this 500-meter safety zone?
That is, the exhibit does come from a wind energy company, yes.
And their studies were based on their own?
I don't know what they based their studies on.
Okay. Has the board, the county, or yourself, considering an extra safety factor of a 1.5 or 2 times that, considering industry is not always exact and precise on their safety systems? We just saw that in Texas. We saw that in Fukushima. These might be extremes. These were chemical plants, nuclear reactors. This is something else here. You're looking at an industry safety standard, and I think industry has proved they don't always get it right. And this is where the role of government needs to step in and say, we need a factor. We need to look at what you have and add to that.
Okay,
Has the
do you
county,
have a question?
has the county looked at other safety factors?
Did you hear that, Chuck?
I did, yeah. I mean, yes, we have looked at a lot of safety factors.
Okay.
I don't want to get too lengthy with the answer, but, we've looked at wind energy for a number of years. There's a lot of different setbacks that are in there. I mean, we have wind farms that are built at 1,200-foot setbacks that exist in the county. Safety factors, we looked at them, they're increased to 3,200, 3,250. So safety factors have been looked at in the past, yes.
Because like I said, when these things blow apart, they don't stop at a specific, a line on the map doesn't stop things from blowing through the air. So I think the county needs to look at that and take it from a point of view of where it came from.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not on this subject, no.
Okay. Any other interested parties or objections, ma'am?
Can I just,
I need your name.
oh, I'm sorry, Mayte Collagius.
Could you spell that?
Maytecallejas.
Thank you.
Chuck just answered that the referendum was not the sole reason for the text changes. Can you tell me what other reasons there were?
I mean,
Can you summarize them? I don't know, maybe she wasn't here for the first.
you were here
part
for
of
the
her
second hearing
presentation.
when I presented, basically when I presented the exhibits from the county in regards to that. We made a note of the referendum. We made a note of the Illinois wind resource map that shows that there is wind that's available in that particular area. We mentioned the topographical features of the Keuke Ridge. We did go into soil types in regards to those factors.
Okay, but that's just,
We did the census documentation in regards to that. We noted the 7 contiguous townships that are in regards to that. We mentioned the hearing facilitator.
okay, but those are just, that's not someone requesting it, there's no one, that's just information. It's not who, somebody has to push for that. I don't, it does not make any sense to me, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No question.
Yeah,
That's, to me, is not an answer.
okay.
Well, he listed the other bullet points, I guess you could call them, reasons that support their,
Supports, but there has to be
Change.
something to be supported. Who requested it, other than the county board?
What was the trigger of the referendum?
I guess, maybe that's,
is that your question?
yes.
What was the trigger of the referendum?
Is it his or her?
Either one of us.
It's both. Can you just answer the question?
I mean, if you review the history of the county board and the agricultural zoning and emergency services of the county board, they discussed it in detail in regards to that. So there's a lot of input that went into those discussions with the committee. So
So basically, the county board is asking for this.
they are the applicant on this. If that's what would be your
Okay.
answer.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Shelp? Ms. Collegius?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any other interested parties or objectors with questions for Mr. Shelp? Nope. Okay.
John Slagle. I thought it was the ag zoning that was submitting this text amendment, not the board, or is it one and the same?
It is the county board.
Newsflash.
The board approved the application. I'm sorry. Based upon the recommendation of the Ag and Zoning Committee.
Oh, God.
You missed the number.
John, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, any other interested parties or objectors with questions? Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Just so that I can be clear, we are relying on this Nordex document. We neither have Nordex turbines within the county, nor does Nordex or any of its affiliates service turbines within the county. Is that correct?
We do not have any Nordex turbines in the county. I'm not aware if they service any of them in the county or not.
Okay. So we're relying heavily on this Nordex document, but it actually doesn't represent any of the equipment that is installed in the county.
Can I object to the use of the word heavily? Go ahead.
Heavily rely on the Nordex document.
It is a document that provided evidence to you and proof of you, and that is being acceptable setback distance. Could be found in other places. If you want extra information brought in on that, we could use it.
And I guess what I would say is it's up to you to determine what weight is to be put on that evidence, whether it's heavy, light, or not at all, when you make your decision in this situation.
Is this are we,
I'm just following up on a comment,
okay.
you know.
I mean, this is the basis of the 1,600 foot setback.
I wouldn't say that.
This is where some document throws that out there as an acceptable number.
Right.
Right.
And it's up to you to decide what weight, again, you decide how much significance to place on it. And it could be a lot, very little, or none. Your call. It's part of when you deliberate and make a decision.
Without this document, there's no basis for 1,600 feet.
It's not my call, and I'm
Right,
not have no
okay.
opinion on that issue.
Chuck, let me just ask this. Have you found, or does it exist, any similar setbacks within the turbines that are within the county that are installed?
I have not found. I do not know if they exist. They do exist, I did not find them. I have found other literature that refers to that same setback distance though.
Okay.
All right, Chuck, I've got a question for you. Was it Reading Township was the other
Correct.
township that the referendum passed, but we're not including them
Correct.
in the text amendment? How come?
Two or three factors. Number one, it's not contiguous to the existing seven. Number two, if you look at the soil maps, they have higher quality soil than we have in this particular area. Number three, with the residential development of South Streeter that expands out going both east and west and south. And in other parts, you have, Encona, which is a small residential area. So you do have some more spread out residential developments in the area. And if you look at a map of Reading Township, that will allow for you to consider developing wind energy within that area. You're basically going to be limited to the 2 miles on the western edge of the township, and then maybe some areas down to the south. So it limits the area of which you'd be able to develop a wind farm project, especially make comparisons to some of the ones that you looked at in the past where they expand. There's multiple townships, not just a few sections of a township.
Okay, did you just say that the residential development is more spread out in that area?
It's, you have these groups of more concentrated developments in certain areas. I mean, you have the South Streeter development area there.
Okay.
You have the development of the area down around Woodland School. You have some residential development down in the landfill area, which is across the river from the South Street area, down through there. And you have the village or the unincorporated community in Encona, which is an area too. Encona sits southwesterly. South Streeter sits up on the north end. The Woodland School area sits back over on the eastern area. So,
And we're assuming that none of those would waive the setback, like some village did?
I shouldn't think of that assumption.
I'm not sure on that. If I can ask this question. If I'm not
Give
sure,
it a shot.
If I'm not sure, isn't there a wind turbine in the back? Part of the Woodland School?
It was proposed but never developed.
Oh, it never got developed? Okay.
Anyone else in the room got a question at this point in time for Chuck? All right, we've got another interested party.
Can I ask that now?
Did you state your name? John
Yeah,
Biston?
John Viston, 14313 East, 1800 North Road, Pontiac, Illinois.
Okay.
Chuck, we have a waiver on there. If I sign a waiver to build closer to my house, can I have it 1,500 to 500 feet from my house if I sign that waiver? There's not a minimum on that waiver, is it?
Yes. 1,600 feet.
I'd have to review the language and say if there was, a limit on the waivers, what you could do on there. I don't know. Give me just a second. allows you to go the waiver allows you to go to within 1.1 times the height of the west tower.
There's a minimum on it.
There's a minimum on it.
Which is how many feet, 1.1?
The tower's 480 feet. It's almost 500 feet.
Yeah.
Anything else, John?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay. Any other interested parties or objectors? Keep the question for me. All right, I need to take about a 5-minute break. I don't know, if we need longer than that, we can take 10, but, take a 5-minute break here at least and be back here at 10 after. Anyone else on the zoning board have a question for Chuck at this point in time? Okay. Chuck, you finished your testimony. Do you have any other witnesses you're going to be putting on?
Madam Chair, no, we do not. Subject to, obviously, I know you're going to do some research and offer a ruling. Subject to that, we have no further witnesses. Thank you.
Okay. Then we're going to move on to other folks to testify.
Units of local government, including school districts, wish to make a presentation.
Okay.
Jeff Ryan, Superintendent of Franklin School District. I reside at 121 Crescent Lane, Cambria, Illinois.
Yep. We need to, do you prefer to be sworn or affirmed?
I can be sworn.
Okay. Chuck, are you still going to be that?
You're supposed to.
Right?
You guys are doing it.
I need to swear him in.
Swear him in.
I have your little cheat sheet. I'll say it wrong, I'm sure.
I can do it.
Go ahead.
Do you have it?
I think I stuck it in here. Here it is.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give in this case now and hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Could you state your name one more time?
Yes, Jeff Bryan, B-R-Y-A-N.
Okay. And you are here on behalf of your school district?
I am. Well, the packets are you ready for me to start?
What's this one here?
That's part of my packet.
Oh, it is?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
There's some more loose ones. Oh, it didn't get,
They don't have enough idea.
You know, I don't want to say anything, but my third graders do a better job of passing papers out. I'm going right into the lion's den right away.
Is this already done?
I've got an extra copy if you need it. Can I borrow that
We're
one?
gonna
Thank you.
designate this as Tri-County Exhibit number 1.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
exhibit.
Are you gonna speak on these in any order? So we can-
I am, the order that I had them in. So the first was kind of evidence for the development of separate deal. Kind of along with that is the Illinois Farm Bureau link document is number 2. The third one is land use impact. Behind that is estimated limited rate fund tax revenue with a spreadsheet behind that. And then a document from the Illinois Department of Revenue is a supporting document behind that.
So your estimated revenue, your estimated limited rate on tax revenue is a 2-page document?
It is 1 page of language and a spreadsheet to follow.
Okay.
Spreadsheet was in this one?
It is, yes.
Would you, just so I'm clear, the first document is evidence for development of separate?
Yes.
Okay, that's the one. And then what's two?
Illinois Farm Bureau link document.
Three is land
Use impact.
and then four is estimated.
Limited rate fund, yep.
And so is that.
And then the potential revenue spreadsheet. And then the final document is one from the Illinois Department of Revenue on wind energy device valuation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
When I first prepared this document some months ago, didn't really anticipate maybe all of the things, so I'm going to actually gloss over some things and try to speed this up a little bit. The first 1, 2, 3 points on my evidence sheet are points that have already been brought in and discussed. I don't have any new or interesting evidence to present on that beyond what you've already heard. I would like to talk a little bit about soil productivity differences in farmland assessed values because they have such a large impact on the ability of a school district to raise revenue. So I would ask you to turn in this first document 1, 2, 3 pages front and back. The bottom of the third page on the back side where it talks about soil productivity or lack of. Everybody's at that point. The information that I gleaned for this presentation came out of really the big soil survey, Livingston County Soil Survey, and the productivity rating bulletin produced by the Office of ACES, University of Illinois. It defines soil productivity. The other night, a question came up, and somebody asked something about, can't you just look at crop yield and determine what a piece of ground is worth or what its productivity is? But that's not what Illinois uses for the purposes of tax assessment and productivity. So they developed a system that has a number of factors in it. But every soil in the state of Illinois has a productivity index associated with it. Now, a lot of the soils, around here are anywhere in the 115 to 120, even a little higher, a little lower, which is pretty good soil. I mean, it's not like deep south Illinois, where a soil productivity rating may be below 90, which is pretty poor soil. The next page, I have gone down through the soil maps of the different townships within the county of Livingston. And I've drawn some generalizations. I'm not going to tell you these are mathematically complete averages. They are generalities based on what I've been able to glean from the soil type maps. But there are 3 or 4 types of soil that are very predominant in the 7 contiguous townships. Bryce silty clay, Swigert silty clay loam, Clarence silty clay loam, and Rowe silt clay. I've got those listed on the front of page 4, about a quarter of the way down, and it talks about their productivity ratings. Bryce has 122, Swigert 118, Clarence 107, and Rowe 111. In contrast, some of the predominant soils throughout the rest of the county, Ashcombe silty loam, productivity index of 127. Andres silt loam, productivity index of 135. Chenoa silt loam 129, Elliott silt loam 125, and Reddick silty clay loam 130. Numbers are different. They are higher for the soils that predominate the rest of the county than in the 7 contiguous areas. So what does that mean for us? What does that infer? When I levy for the school district, I send in an ask, essentially. I'm asking the county the county clerk to work with the assessor and to apply a tax on a piece of farmland. I ask for dollars. Excuse me. And they convert that into a tax rate in most cases. But what it really gets down to is that ability of the soil, its PI, productivity index, to produce a crop, and ultimately for me to tax its ability to do that. If you were to turn the page to where it talks about farmland assessed valuations, I kind of take this conversation one step further. And the reason I brought the link document in is I'm going to refer to productivity index numbers and what's called the certified value. And the certified value is the number that's assigned to a productivity index by the Illinois Department of Revenue. This is the number that is assigned that I basically tax, my taxes applied to. So if I'm setting up here in Broughton and Sullivan Townships and my soils have, and I use the number 114 as an average there, have a productivity of 114, which very closely resembles many of the soils in that area of the county, the certified value for that ground is $323.01 per acre. So when I apply my education fund tax to that, it generates so many dollars. TriPoint has a tax rate of $2.80 per $100 assessed valuation. And so when I multiply that tax rate times the certified value of that soil with a productivity index of 114, I generate $9.04. That's what that acre gives me in the ed fund when I apply my total rate to it. If I had a soil that resembles some ones in the other part of the county, for instance, if I had a soil that was a 129, that same tax rate generates $19.97. That's a difference of $10.93 an acre. On a 640 acre section of farmland, that's almost $7,000 difference less I get for taxing farm ground of that lower productivity rating than one with a higher productivity rating. So question, why are you here? Why do you bring that up? What difference, does that make? And that answer lies with the value of wind turbines. So the state has put forth a formula, and my last supporting document in the packet is simply what that procedure is. And it values every megawatt of wind farm turbines, $360,000 per megawatt. Then it applies a trending factor, and that trending factor is essentially the consumer price increase since the year 2007 or 8 that value was put in place. So we currently have a trending factor of about 1.2, so about 20% higher value now than they were first originally valued, some almost 10 years ago. So, I go through the calculations, but those wind turbines are drastically important to the economic viability of the school district, of my school district. And I'll go through some numbers with that for you later. So I've kind of finished these first two. I've kind of glossed over my highlights there. But the big thing I wanted to point out was this part of the county has poorer soils. And that's what it means to a school district. And not just to a school district, but to any taxing body. Whether it's township, whether it's county, whether it's a drainage district. It is the same across the board. Anybody that is a taxing body in this part of the county does not have the same advantage as some of the other parts of the county. The second thing I want to talk about is the land use impact of setback differences on the development of wind turbines. When I first read through the wind ordinances for Livingston County. About a couple pages in, a page in or so, listed the purposes of the wind ordinance for Livingston County. And there were 3 of those. And I think you've done an excellent job of addressing one of them, and that's safety. The number one thing in that says that safety should be ensured. But it also has 2 other purposes. One is to facilitate economic opportunities for local residents, and the third is to promote wind energy. And I don't think we've done a good job of doing those 2. We've hit the safety, but the other 2 purposes of the ordinances we really haven't talked about and we really haven't addressed much. And I want to address that a little bit here. Economic opportunities, you guys are in a balancing act. You are balancing safety and personal property of those that don't want wind turbines against the economic opportunities of those that do. You know, for every person that says, hey, I don't want one close to my house, somebody says, hey, give me another 2 on my farm because I could use the extra income. So you're in a terrible position of balancing. But I believe that the setbacks of 3250 for a primary structure and setbacks of 1640 from property lines are really detrimental to economic development for those people that want it on their farms, and promotion of wind energy. So, some basic information I use, just some basic stuff. You know, we teach in our classes, how big's a 40-acre field, how big's an 80-acre field, how many square feet in an acre, apply some geometry to it, and you get some pretty astounding numbers. A primary structure setback of 3,250 feet eliminates 760 acres from a potential wind farm development. Yeah, I know that, you know, waivers are possible, but if I'm sitting and I own a half a section of ground, 320 acres, and that's a good chunk of ground, and I have a neighbor in that section, in that 640 that says, you know what, I don't want any closer to 3250, then I've lost all of my opportunity on that half section of ground to build a wind farm. Matter of fact, it's actually 760 surrounding acres from that one structure, which is more than an entire mile by mile section of farm ground that's eliminated when you have a 3250 setback. In comparison, a 1,600-foot setback only eliminates the surrounding 185 acres. You know, so you know what, you can build a house, there'll be 185 acres around you that don't have a wind turbine on it still. That's still a considerable setback. That's a difference of 575 acres that would be eliminated with these, with the setback of 3250. Property lines are almost even more damaging, even with the shorter setback of 1640. Because a property line isn't a set point like a primary structure. A property line moves, vertical and horizontal. And so when you have a 40-acre field, you've got 1,320 feet on one side, across the top, down the other side, and across the bottom. And that 1640 has to be measured from every point on that line outward. And so the 40-acre example says, if you have a setback of 1,640 feet, you eliminate 392 acres from development. If in comparison you use a 1.35 times the tower height, you only eliminate the surrounding 78 acres. That's a difference of 314 acres. And that's for a piece of ground that doesn't have a primary structure on it. That's a bare 40-acre field sitting out in the middle of the section that would cause the elimination of 314 more acres. In the example that it's an 80-acre field, 240s, kind of in a rectangular orientation, you eliminate 492 acres from development. In comparison, the 1.35 times the tower height, and I'm assuming a tower height of 450 feet, it could be a little more, it could be a little less, I needed to rest on a number to use. That only eliminates the surrounding 115 acres. That's a difference, folks, of 377 acres. And again, that's an empty 80-acre field. A 160-acre example, eliminates 590. The 1.35 only eliminates 177, that's a difference of 413. So when you go to those large setbacks, it is a tremendous impact on those farmers, on those producers in that area that desire to boost their economics. We just talked about the difference in the productivity of the soil. This is an avenue for them to generate additional income. Typically, a wind developer will pay about $3,500 per megawatt of production if they put a wind turbine, if they lease a place for a wind turbine on your farm. $7,000. It takes about an acre to do that. You can't raise a legal crop in Illinois and make $7,000 an acre. I don't even know you could an illegal crop, but it is substantial money. Okay. I want to also give you a specific example about Tri-Point. We're a small school district to the east of here. We actually lie in 4 different counties, but we are in that section. We have a lot of residents. We do have a lot of property in the northeast portion of the county. I want to talk about tax rates and tax returns because this can be a real point of contention. In a school district, we levy taxes 2 different ways. We have funds that are limited by our residents and voters. You can only tax this much in this fund. Our education fund, our transportation, our building, our working cash, and then kind of within that, tucked in that education is our special ed and our leasing, health, life, safety is also a nickel. So those funds are limited. And we are a school district that has been on the financial watch list. As you know, and we're all appreciative today, that the governor signed a new education funding formula to make Illinois not the worst funded state in the state anymore in terms of education. But in the Tri-Point School District, it is our intent to continue to levy the maximum we can in each of those funds. Last year we did run a deficit budget. You know, if we'd had all our state money, we'd have been pretty balanced, but we wouldn't have been making a lot of money either. So we're kind of a district that is looking for revenue. So it is our goal to maximize those limited rates. So we do the truth in taxation hearing and we bump up our ask so that in the event that the EAV goes up by more than 5%, we capture all that money. So a lot of times we'll set the tax rate 8%, 9% higher than we did the year before. We do a truth in taxation hearing, and we explain to people we do that because we have to capture every single penny. So we will need to continue to do that until we build our cash reserves. So when people say, well, you get a wind farm in your school district, now you don't have to tax as much. Maybe down the road when we have money in the bank, that's a true statement. But it's our intent to continue to tax those funds at the maximum rate. And what I've done is I've included a spreadsheet for you to show you what that would look like in the event a 200 megawatt wind farm got planted in our school district. It's got the education fund and its rate at 280. Our building fund rate is 75, transportation 55, working cash, health, life, safety, special ed, and leasing are all a nickel. It shows the original 2007 taxable value per megawatt. It shows what the trending factor is, that consumer price increase that's applied to that basic number as we move forward. It shows when I do the calculation then, and I take the 2 megawatts, 720,000 times the trending factor, divide that down because I can only tax it at 1/3 of its rate, just like your residential home. We can tax a rate, 1/3 of the assessed valuation of it. And so it shows what our tax receipts per megawatt would be, and then the 200 megawatt. But for our school district, given our tax rate and our intent to keep those funds, keep those rates at the maximum, a 200 megawatt wind farm would generate over 800,000 in our ed fund, 216,000 in our building fund, 158 in our transportation, another 14,400 in working cash, health, life, safety, and leasing, and another 11,500 in special ed, for a total revenue of a little bit over 1.2 million. Now, that money's not guaranteed forever. I'll be the first to admit that. Built into the formula and in the deal you see from the IDOR, it shows how they're valued, how the trending factor works, and how they depreciate. But I will tell you that in the 9 years since they've been out, windmills could have depreciated 36%. But with the trending factor set at 1.2, they've really only gone down 16% in the eyes of the taxing body. So depreciation is there, but it's also offset by CPI. Sometimes CPI is a little higher, a little lower, but over this 9-year period, it's been about 20%. We would have expected a 36% loss, so we're still, we've got a 16% loss instead of the 36 that we might have seen. Now, you'll say, hey, that's terrible. That money's going to decline every year. You know what? You can give me 1.2 million new money that I've never had before in my budget, and tell me you're going to give me a little less each year. I can manage that. That's my job, is to how do I manage revenues? How much am I going to put away in the bank? How much are we going to use in operating expenses? The fact that that new money comes in is much more important than the fact that there is some depreciation each year. The other question people ask, hey, what's going to happen to your state aid? Not really sure yet, because the governor only signed the funding formula 6 hours ago, something like that. So we don't know. I will tell you, under the old formula, we get about 500,000 of state aid every year. Now, we're kind of in a lucky position right now. We just had a wind farm put in to the Ford and Kankakee portion of our school district. I've got 92 turbines there. I've got 184 megawatts that will start paying me tax revenue in the summer of 18. So I've done a lot of calculation on the old formula. What does that do to me? I only get a little less than $500,000 in state aid from the state. And you've got to understand, when I talk about state aid, my district is much different than other districts. I've run the numbers on Prairie Central, I've run the numbers on different school districts, and there are so many different factors in there. I can't speak to what would happen to another school district, but I can tell you what will happen for us. Had the formula stayed the same, this new funding thing had not happened. Illinois had 3 different tiers, kind of a full funded, a partial funded, and then they had what called a flat rate district. And you couldn't get any worse than a flat rate district. They give you $200 per kid in your district, and they call that your state aid. And actually, this new wind farm in our school district would make us a flat grant district. So the lowest I can get from the state in the old formula was $80,000. In the general state aid, there's 2 pieces to it. One is called a poverty grant, and the other is called your formula grant. Your poverty grant is based solely on the number of low-income kids in your district. I've got a lot. My poverty grant is close to $280,000 of my almost $500,000 state aid. So I only get about $220,000 in formula money. So it's not a lot. If the lowest I can get is $80,000, there's $140,000 difference between those two. So who here at the table wouldn't give $140,000 away to get $1.2 million? My school district will. So that is kind of the end of my presentation. I wanted to talk specifically about us. I wanted to talk in general about productivity indexes and tax assessments of soils. And I'll try to answer any questions about that I can.
Okay, anyone from the DDA have questions for Mr. Bryan? Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, you've got Kempton.
I do?
Cullen, Haven,
Yes?
Piper City.
Yes.
The structures of those towns are depleting very
Absolutely.
much of them that long
Absolutely.
because of the tax money.
I mean, we have, our newest structure is a partial high school structure in Cullum that was done 98, 2000, something like in there. And that's one wing. We have the oldest, smallest gymnasium in the United States. We do in Illinois, I don't know about the United States. But we, if you've ever been to these guys who've been there, they know. But, you know, we are really looking at this to be an opportunity for us to.
And if I'm not mistaken, it also helps your road district, your fire department,
Every taxing body.
every taxing body.
And I didn't run the number because I don't represent them,
That's fine.
but I will share that I believe it's every taxing body.
If people would take a drive and look at the towns that you see, this isn't, we're not talking, this is me talking. We're not talking Pontiac, we're not talking Dwight, we're not talking anything else but these little towns that are falling apart.
And that's why I wanted to stress to you guys at the beginning of the meeting that there is more than just safety. That there is economic opportunity. And I will tell you, this is the 5th year I've been at Tri-Point. I've had one new house built in my school district since I've arrived. And they petitioned to go to Pontiac. But you know, we don't have a lot of economic opportunity, folks, and this is it for us. I mean, this is the deal, and this is how important it is to our school district.
Well, you did reference quite a bit on soil types and productivity.
Yes.
So what happens to the tax rate when you say you've got a hog building that goes up? How does that help your school?
It is assessed. The tax assessor will come out and put a value on it, and whatever that real value is, let's say it's really valued at $300,000, then we get to tax 100,000 of it times our tax rate. So I haven't had any new hog, matter of fact, they're tearing them down. And I've got
I must be the only unlucky neighbor in the county.
that they're building new by you.
My own.
I could find you a spot with no hog buildings on it. But we have had very little new construction, and residential was the one I could name specifically. And there's been, you know, here or there, you know, you get a Morton building go up, or you know, but not anything near the value of this. This represents, and here's size and scope. Our school district has an EAV, an equalized assessed valuation, $66 million. So when I take a tax rate and I multiply it times that number, that's how many dollars I can produce. We've got $5.76 per $100 of assessed valuation. So we work the formula out, but we got about $66 million now. The 92 turbines that were added in Fort and Kankakee County will almost be an additional 24 million EAD to us. That's like over a 30% increase.
And are they online now?
They started producing in January, so they will be taxed in 17, payable in 18. Yep.
This is what I'm really struggling with. Safety is a huge issue for me.
Absolutely.
Huge issue. And you protect kids every day.
I do.
When it comes down to safety of children versus the dollars, which side of the fence?
Well, number one, we don't build a wind turbine right next to the school.
I'm not, yeah, right.
I mean, you don't. We try to take, you know, here's a good example. Speed limits. How fast can you go in front of school when kids are present? 20 miles an hour. Because it's a clear and present danger that they are right there. How fast can we go down the interstate? We start at 70 and then we go up from there until they say that's too much. But why do we have a difference in it? Because those two things are not the same. A school district, a school crossing is not the same as a 4-lane interstate. And this part of the county is not the same as Fairbury and Pontiac. We don't have nearly the houses in the country. I mean, the evidence that was on housing density, you don't have nearly the houses in the country.
So you've got a lower population.
Yes.
And you've got people that are interested in it because the referendum passed.
Yes.
How does the waiver not work for that, for your area?
Because that one person that can kill 760 acres, one house per section, you've eliminated. I mean, it is such a large number of acres to take out. 3250. I mean, when you figure that, that's over a mile square that you take out. I've never seen an example of a wind turbine being blown over a mile.
Well, are you thinking that the referendum goes to the folks that live in the towns? So their vote really, is kind of inconsequential because they don't need the protection, right?
Well, the towns, again, towns have a different setback.
Right.
Right.
So, I'm thinking of the property owner.
Right.
And let's just make one thing clear. Spinning blades, flashing lights, all that stuff doesn't bother me a bit. I live in the country, I live on 7 acres. I would never be able to get a wind turbine on my property.
I live in the footprint of the one in Ford County. I've got the flashing lights and the blades around. Yeah.
And I may not be sensitive, but that doesn't mean that my neighbor isn't, okay? How do you, I mean, if you're so spread out, and if you think that many of the people that voted in favor of this are in the towns, how do you protect the folks that are out there with a small piece of property that may be sensitive to this stuff?
Well, they get the 1,600-foot setback, which is more than a lot of people in the county already get. I mean, those have already been built, those are there. And at some point you have to say, is it safety or is it perceived safety? I don't know. I can't measure, you and I can't measure what somebody's thinking or feeling, we don't know. But the one thing we did have a document that talked about, kind of that safety zone, and that's a starting point.
I'm not, everybody has to be out of the way of flying first.
Absolutely.
That's not even a concern. It's the sensitivity issue, and if you can waive, if enough people want it, I think the waiver covers. I feel like the waiver would cover it. In your area, do you know enough of the people in your rural areas to know if they're in favor and
I
would not be opposed? I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot of farm ground, a lot of farmers that would want them.
Sure.
It seems like a slam dunk at the way that the ordinance is written right now.
And the thing that you weigh is this farmer that's sitting here with 640 acres and is, pushing productivity to the max. This year, we've struggled with rain and we've had bad weather, and I'm hearing, hey, we're not gonna make cost of production this year. We're a losing proposition. You are weighing economic opportunity versus this factor that you bring up. You just are. I mean, that's why you guys are sitting in the judge's chairs. I mean, you've got to do that. I'm just trying to make the strongest case I can for what those economic opportunities mean to the school district.
I thought we found a happy medium where, the folks that want them, they're still going to be viable. So I really struggle with.
I understand.
I mean, kids in the school district, I would think you're sensitive to safety.
I struggle every day.
And you probably see
things
lots of
about
kids
safety.
that have issues. These 10 kids don't. These 10 kids have sensitivities that
Absolutely.
you would never have dreamed of. How do you know?
Last year we had the boy in our building that had the severe peanut allergy. Moved in from another district, and we had to go peanut free. Just like that. And it's a tough thing to do. But for that student, with that documented, we had to do it. We have students with varied disabilities and conditions, and we try to make school the safest place as we can for them. And you guys are trying to do your job here. So here's the deal. I don't believe there's any one right answer, and I don't believe there's any wrong answer. It's a judgment call, and that's what it's going to end up being. Is a judgment call. And at what point are you going to draw the line?
One other question for
Yeah.
you. In the population in your school districts, are the bulk of the kids coming from in town, or what's your rural population?
It is a
What's
bulk
the-
in town.
Okay.
We do have, Cabre, Kempton, Coleman, Piper City. You got this little town of Stell.
Do you
But
get those kids?
yes, we do. They are within about a mile of our district. We got about another mile. We've got actually a student that lives 2 families further north and east that we pick up. We go right to the Ford County line there. And they're on 1700, so they got 1 more mile.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do pick them up.
But what's the, I don't know what the right word is.
Proportion,
Proportion
percentage,
of-
sure.
Yeah.
I- we are very heavily now, because farms are so big, again, you've mentioned, density is small in the country. Some of our farm families are pretty good sized families, that just tends to sometimes be the case. If I have to venture a guess, I would say we're 80 to 90% in town, and somewhere between, maybe around 15% rural.
Okay.
Yeah. We run 5 bus routes in the morning, rural pickups to bring in the attendance centers. So that's still a pretty good number.
But based on what you just said, you would say most of your rural houses are farmers
Yes.
paying large sums of taxes compared to a house in town that's not paying any taxes at all. Your house in town,
Sure.
from me being on the school board, with 5 kids, will not pay as much taxes as that farmer will out there in the country.
It depends on the house you live in and the farm. It does. Here's the deal. You pay for a house that's maybe $130,000, $50,000 house. You're going to pay what, $3,500, $4,000 for taxes, depending on the rate.
Those 4 towns, you'll probably not find a house that's worth much over that.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. So, I will tell you this, on our tax computation sheets, overwhelmingly, the largest proportion of our tax revenue is farmland assessment. That's the question I think you're asking. It took me a while to get there.
Because you're the man who's paying the taxes,
Yes,
and you're saying the wind turbines will also help the farmer
absolutely.
pay those taxes
Sure.
better.
And, here's the other part of that, and I kind of glossed over that as I went through. In addition to the limited rate funds, there's also unlimited. Tort, IMRF, Social Security, there are some funds that I can limit whatever I need to pay for it. So, like safety, school safety is one of those, tort. If I determine that I need to spend, $250,000 or $3 million, I'll just do $3 million. On a project that's going to guarantee the safety of kids in different buildings. I can just impose that on the taxpayers. Responsibly, your goal is to not do that. We do that almost every 10 years. We do our 10-year life safety projects. And then we sell life safety bonds, and we pay those off. And we're in the last 2 years of our last deal, and it's like 3-point-some million. But the effect of additional EAV isn't going to increase the amount of money I bring in. It's going to lower the tax rate for everybody in the district. So if I need $1 million and I've got 10 people paying for it, everybody's got to pay $100,000. But if I've got 20 people paying for it, now you cut that in half, you're only paying 50. And that's the same principle of these unlimited funds. So my tort, if I'm levying $400,000 in tort, and it costs 65 cents now on my tax rate to pay for that. If I get an extra 20-some million in that, instead of having to charge all my taxpayers 65 cents, now I can charge them 48 cents. And because I've got extra people paying, that 48 cents generates as much as the 65 cents used to. So I know that's a tough, but it's just more people paying for a fixed thing.
But you said you weren't going to reduce.
Yeah.
Okay, I said I wasn't going to reduce the fixed rate funds. The education fund, the building that I've got a limited rate, and I can only charge up to that amount, those we will continue to maximize. But the other ones, it's my obligation to not overcharge my taxpayers. I should only levy what I need to use. Keep a little in the bank, but I should really only levy what I need. And tort is one of those. So, so it would essentially lower the tax rate for everybody in those funds.
Okay.
In those funds.
One last question for you.
Yep.
Which of these townships are in your school district?
Broughton and Sullivan,
Just two?
yes.
So what percentage of your levy comes from Livingston County?
Right at, I'm about 56% Ford and about 26% Livingston. And then a small amount from Iroquois and KPP.
Any other questions from zoning board members?
Yes.
Okay.
You made a reference in your thing that lease fees from turbines based on 3,500 per megawatt. Is that
Yes.
standard?
It is.
And where did you get that information?
I got that from the wind farm in Ford County. That is Kelly Creek, and talking to their developer, John Baker, who I've worked with on both Pilot Hill and Kelly Creek. I said, hey, what's a ballpark number that I could share that would be kind of representative? And he says, typically it's around $3,500 per megawatt.
But it's not limited in any way. They can go up, or they can offer somebody more for that.
Absolutely. That is between the landowner and the wind farm. There's no regulation that I know of on it. There may be. I don't know of one. And I've never been involved in a negotiation, so I can't give you firsthand knowledge. I'm only relaying that number from them.
Okay.
And maybe they want me to advertise a low number so they get good leases the next time. I don't know.
Thank you on that. And the next thing you said was, it's not necessarily the 3,200 from a primary residence, primary structure.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure I said that right. But the 1,600 feet from a property line that is a killer.
Yeah, because you've got all these empty tracts. You know, we talked about the density being really, really low. A lot of absentee landlords too. So you can get a landlord that says, hey, you know what, I got 80 acres there. They didn't offer me a windmill, and I'll be doggone if I'm gonna let my neighbor have one. I won't sign a waiver. So, but because it's not from a single point radiating out, you know, that square 40 or that rectangular 80, you've got to go 1640 out all the way around it. It creates, you know, this little rounded square or rectangle around it of off-limit area. And those are empty. I mean, those are tracts of land with no primary structure on them, or the primary structure would take precedence over it. So these are just empty pieces of ground that somebody in Chicago could say, hey, you know what, I don't know, windmill, so I'm not going to do a waiver. My neighbor wants one really bad, but I'm not going to do it. I mean, so.
Any other questions from zoning board members?
I have some, but I'll take it, let everybody else go.
Yeah, I think I'll have a couple more as myself, but we'll open it up to interested parties and objectors. Are there any other units of local government? I guess they would be
County's land.
anyone represented by an attorney? Go ahead.
Mr. Bryan, I just want to clear up one thing. You're advocating for less than a 3,250-foot setback. Is that just for the 7 townships or for all of Livingston County?
That's only for the 7 townships.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. Any other parties represented by an attorney? Okay, any other interested parties would like to ask a question, Mr. Carney? Okay, if you can state your name for the record.
Tom Kolasik once again. Please bear with me. Okay, shut out a lot of numbers. I did. I'm a city suburban boy initially, so let me catch up with this farm thing with the soil. Yes. What is the lowest number and what is the highest number? The lowest number theoretically is 47 and the highest number is 147. So you got 47 to a 147 range. Yes. In this area that you were talking about, I believe you were primarily between 100 and 120. And I used 114 as the representative average for those. How often, no, that's not the right way, but how do they sample this? Is it every mile within a township? Every taxable pin that appears? I guess what I'm saying is, how often do you sample this to get the number, and then how big of an area can you apply it to? Okay, I'm not a soil scientist, I didn't do the survey. I can tell you that if you've seen the soil maps, they're... Because I'm just, I was looking at the map, right. We're talking 7 townships, if my math's correct, it's 252 square miles. Absolutely. This book is this thick, and it just, the pages... I'm just trying to... Yes. It is a very, and it's a very long-standing soil survey that was done the entire state of Illinois. And this number helps generate taxable income off of that part. Right, and so the Illinois legislature then passed a series of laws that determined how farmland was taxed. It did not seem fair to tax it on simply its resale value, because you could never generate enough money off of it to pay taxes and do all your production. So they passed a couple of laws and said that we will use productivity increase, and the University of Illinois developed that formula. This is how we figure it, and there's production costs that go into it, there's land value that goes into it, a number of factors. But they run everything through there and they get this number. Then I believe it's the Department of Revenue then. These numbers kind of started, and I can't tell you what year they started, but everything had a baseline. And then the law said, at some point in time, I think in '88, they changed it, they said it could only go up 10% a year of its value. Well, the poor soils that were, say, $10 soils would only go up $1. So you go $10, $11, and then $11 went up in these little increments. But some McLean County farm ground that might be $100 ground was 100, 110, now it's 121. So the disparity between the poor ground and the rich ground kept getting wider and wider and wider. So a few years ago they changed that law and said, hey, the soils will go up 10% of the median soil in Illinois, which is about 111. So now the poorer soils really are going up more than 10% of their values. The richer soils are going up less than 10% of their values. So it is slowly closing that gap. But it's a lot of the legislature says we'll do it this way. Yes, yeah. Those numbers I know. There's a ton of them. When you're giving out numbers, I want to try and get that. I mean, they sat down a room full of superintendents about 3 years ago to drill this into us on how this works. So these 2 townships. Yes. And pardon my ignorance here. Broughton and Sullivan. Broughton is correct, and Sullivan. We have 72 square miles. How many wind turbines could be put there? I'm not a wind developer. Okay. I'm just trying to think of the month, because you gave out a number, 200 megawatts. And I think you said that would be 1.2 million to your district alone. Is that an annual figure? That is an annual before depreciation or CPI would take effect. So every year we're going to lose a little percent of that. We would lose a little, or if CPI was more than 4%, I could gain a little. What is the life expectancy generally of the wind turbine? When does this end? 20 or 30 years? 25? The depreciation cycle is a 20-year cycle. Okay. But I've seen where sometimes they predict the life being somewhere between 20 and 30. So that would be taxes that just your taxing body would give 1.2 million. Yes. 200 megawatt. We still have fire districts. Correct. So theoretically, this 200 megawatts could be paying upwards total property taxes 2 million, 2.5? Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. Like I said, I'm just trying to get these numbers. Forgive me. The one, we were talking safety and 1,600 feet. There's gonna be no wind turbines within 1,600 feet of a school, is there? I believe in the ordinance that's existing right past, I think it's maybe a mile and a half from school. It's a pretty big number from a school. So this would not make a difference should it pass? It would not be located, right. It would not get any closer than that to a school. Okay, we're talking safety again, and that's going to be my hammering point. Will you have one within 1,600 feet of your residence? I do. Okay. I actually have one within 1,600 foot of my school. Because when you were talking to safety, and I notice, you know, in areas we have a larger population, that's you're going to worry about safety, but we get a little rural where I would want to think that safety would still be a concern, whether you're a school child, an adult, a senior. And it doesn't sound like that's the point. Say that again. I'm not sure I heard your question. We're going to be concerned with safety of having this not, you said it'd be a mile and a half from the school. I'm not. Okay. Okay. That's not correct? That is correct. Okay.
That's correct.
But for any other resident, that's not a safety factor for them. We have less of a safety. We're considered a little less valuable.
You're a country highway. You're not an interstate, but you're not a school zone. I use that speed limit example, and so.
And you were saying about how far something may blow off of a wind turbine, we don't know.
We don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert.
The amount of hydraulic oil in there probably exceeds 35, 40 gallons.
I have no idea, but
okay.
It
would be what we would call a reportable quantity in the emergency management field, which would be anything over 100 pounds. That going off in the air alone, 15, 20 mile an hour wind, which is not uncommon here, it will travel more than a mile.
And you know that because?
ExxonMobil refinery, when they blow off oil, it travels a long ways.
Yeah. So when you present,
and it's not 400 feet in the air.
I'm not an expert on this. You're asking me things I didn't present evidence on, and I would ask you that if you want to present evidence on that at some, that would be your turn.
You did give testimony about it not. You never heard of it going that. And that's, I'm just going back to that point of your testimony where you said.
Okay, Mr. Kolasik, if you have questions for Mr. Bryan, we've got to keep it a minute.
I'm trying to keep it moving.
Question format and not testimony format.
The zoning board was able to, give opinion and not questions. I would expect to have a little bit of leeway there too.
I think we exceeded that, so can you keep it in the form of a question?
That was just the last safety factor was consider the height, you have this residue, oil in there.
Okay.
It's gonna go a lot further than a mile and a half.
Okay. You'll have your opportunity if you want to present testimony on that.
Oh.
Okay, Mr. Bryan, you did state that you have a turbine that's less than 1,600 feet from your school?
I'm in Ford County. We have different ordinances there.
How close is it to your school?
I think 1,500.
And is that something you had to waive, or that's just this close? Can it be that close to the edge of town?
I think the town did waive because the town extends further in that direction, but it didn't get over the 1,500 to the school. I'm trying to remember back 3 years ago when that all happened, but I believe that there was a waiver by the town for the placement of the one that's the closest to my school building. It didn't infringe upon me any closer than the ordinance allowed, but it did on the town, and they had to waive because it jutted out that direction.
And that's one of your buildings that's in Ford?
Yes.
Okay. Any other parties with a question for Mr. Bryan? Okay, I've got one behind you to the right. Right.
Mike Feynman with the paper of Dwight.
What was your name again?
Mike Feynman, F-E-I-N-M-A-N, paper of Dwight.
Okay.
Jeff, do you know what the setback is for your wind farm that's in existence? And it's different in the two counties?
It's in Ford County, and it's whatever the Ford County ordinances are. And I want to say it could be 1250 or 1500. I'm not familiar, I have no idea.
But it's less than 3,200?
Yes, it is
Okay.
that.
But you think it's even less than 1,600?
I believe it is. But that really doesn't have any bearing on this. This is Livingston County.
Anyone else with questions? Ms. Gerwin?
My question is, if I understood you correctly, you said you do not know how the new school funding formula will affect your funding.
Right, exactly how. I know that for this year, there is a hold harmless. We will not get less dollars than we got last year.
As part of the budget deal.
Part of the budget deal that happened a little while ago. And then just today was the school funding formula bill that was signed by the governor. So we had the money appropriated, but we didn't have a disbursement mechanism. When they passed the budget, they rescinded the old funding formula and said we're going to put a new one in place. And then they couldn't agree on a new one, and that's why we didn't get our first two payments. So I have not got to see. The state board provides us with a calculation tool. It is a spreadsheet that we fill in, how many students we have, what our EAV is, and we go down through our poverty numbers and all that, and it will then generate for us what your state aid is projected to be, given a certain pot of money.
Right. You don't have that yet?
I don't have that yet. In the old formula, when we were working with Kelly Creek, I could take my EAV, and back then it was like maybe 62 million, and I could add 23 million to it and say, how does that affect the bottom, if it spit it out for me?
Right, but now we know from newspaper accounts, right? I should ask this as a question.
Okay.
And can you tell us what are the factors that are, I guess let's skip that. Basically what I want to get to is, since we don't have that mechanism at this point, when do you expect to get it? And will you be presenting those numbers, the actual numbers? Because I don't know, I've been trying to get hold of it for purposes of looking at how it will affect our schools here, and I just can't get it. And I'm not sure I could understand it if I did get it.
I sent a letter to Tom Bennett and Jason Berrickman today, and I sent a letter to my regional superintendent asking for anything they could supply to me to present tonight. The comment I got back was, here's what I can tell you for sure. You will not get less dollars this year than you got last. It is not an absolute hold harmless. You could see declines in the future if your EAV changes. They believe that there's a similar mechanism in the new funding formula, because this is all about the ability to pay. That they're trying to equalize schools' ability to pay. So a new Trier has a tremendous ability to pay, but they were still getting a lot of state aid, and that didn't seem fair. And so other school districts that didn't have as great of ability to pay, they were trying to boost them up. So when I get extra assessed valuation in my district, I now have a greater ability to pay.
And that's what
Right.
I want to see when you put in this new EAV, which is based on the current
Right.
law, which could change, but assuming that stays the same, what happens to your state part of it? Under the old one, you said you could tell it was going to be a good deal, but under the new one...
Right. Here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that we get about $220,000 in formula money. The rest is a poverty grant, which is treated separately. And ours isn't expected to go up much, maybe up to 230, 240. We're not going to get a big increase, but the numbers I saw from Bennett and Berrickman both said we wouldn't see a large increase in Tri-Point School District. We're not that big, we generate a lot of extra dollars. Even if you took all of that money away from me, I'm still a winner.
But how do the poverty grants, are there going to be these poverty grants?
I believe that has not changed. That what we've been, only thing we've been talking about has been the formula part of it. Yep, but again, that's my supposition, having not seen the law yet. It was just signed this afternoon.
Okay, any other questions? Parties and questions for Mr. Ryan? Does the county have?
We don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay, any other zoning board members?
Yeah, I have some. We've talked a lot about this with the townships. Just so that I can be clear from your testimony, you're here representing the school district and expressing your interest in the development in Broughton and Sullivan Township
Correct.
exclusively.
Those are the two townships that we have students that live in and acreage that belongs to us on the tax rolls.
Okay, so it's not inclusive of the additional 7 or the additional 5 that are actually listed. You don't have any interest in those, for all intents and purposes, you don't necessarily care about them.
As a superintendent of Tri-Point School District, I don't.
Okay.
As an educator in general, I do care about the welfare of other school districts and their ability to generate revenue too. Sure.
Okay. You've given us this worksheet with the potential revenue, and you've expressed, you've drawn conclusions on this that I don't know are justified.
Okay, how so?
You've determined how many megawatts is on this wind farm.
Okay. If you want to scale.
And it's not,
sure.
There's nothing in the works. Is this a, so if we say.
This is based on the last 2 wind farms that I saw built,
Okay.
Pilot Hill and Kelly Creek.
Okay.
Both within about 10 megawatts of 200.
Okay.
One a little over, I think one's 210 and one's 194.
Okay.
I used 200 as a good round number, made the math easy. But I also gave you a line in there that is the tax receipts per megawatt. So if you would say, hey, you know what, Tri-Point isn't gonna get 200 megawatt, they're only gonna get 180. You can take that number times 180, and you can draw your own conclusion for the final column.
Got it.
Yep.
Were they of physical or of a similar footprint? Those other 2, the 190, 210?
They are both 2 megawatt turbine towers.
No, land footprint, township-wise.
Oh.
Broughton and Sullivan Township is however many
Sure.
square acres. Were they of similar size, or were they physically larger?
Okay, I will tell you that the Kelly Creek one is more compact.
Okay.
It only includes 1 township in Ford. It includes Rogers Township, which is a short township. It's only 5 miles tall and 6 wide. So it's a little shorter. And then it does extend up into the south part of Norton in Kankakee, a small part of it. So it's basically 1 1/4 townships. Okay, so kind of in comparison.
Okay.
Pilot Hill, not so much. It goes from the Ford County line east, meandering in Iroquois and Kankakee County to about the Lehigh Road or so. I mean, it is stretched out compared to Kelly Creek. So they're different.
You would represent, though, that one, the one that stretches out, would be physically larger than the
Yes.
2 Broughton and Sullivan Township?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The overall footprint would be bigger.
Got it.
One of the limiting factors here, I mean, I'm not a designer, but I have some common sense. And if I know that there's a line at Emmington that has towers going to it, and there's a line at the Ford-Livingston County line, and there's 6 miles between it, I can tell you that wind farm's not gonna be more than 6 miles wide. Yeah, and so it may be a little bigger north to south, but I would say, if it was me designing it, it would be more compact as a Kelly Creek.
Okay. We talked about depreciation and end of
Yeah.
life. What's your expected revenue at end of life?
Okay, and I have to make a big assumption on CPI. So let's say that in this 9-year or so period, that this was a 20% CPI. And so let's say we get to 10 years and it's more like 25. So over the period of 20 years, which is the depreciation time on the turbines, we could expect a 50% increase coupled with a 80% decrease. So we would see a net decrease of 30% off of that value at the end of the time. So if you would say, hey, I take about a third of that off, that's what you, so instead of 1.2 million, I'm gonna get more like 800,000.
Okay.
If CPI does what I said.
Right.
Yep.
At the end of its useful life, does it continue to generate revenue for you, or is it non-taxable?
As long as it's operating, we tax it. If it becomes unoperational, and the mechanism for
Decommissioning.
thank you, I couldn't come up with decommissioning takes place, it would go off the tax rolls.
Okay. In the transition year between end of life and decommissioning, what would happen with your general state aid?
Okay, the last year, we'll still, because state aid lags
Right.
about a year behind, it's based on your previous year's EAV. So when that's on there.
State aid. State aid.
State aid is based off of your last year's EAV. That's the number that goes in to figure out my ability to pay.
Student attendance.
No, well, that too. But because we need a factor to stay the same, we need a constant in there to make it, say student number stayed the same, poverty stayed the same, everything stayed the same except the EAV change of this thing going off the tax rolls. So at the end of life, that last year, I'm still not gonna get, that $220, $220,000 they were gonna give me in state aid. But if I'm a fine fiscal manager of my school district, I've saved for that over the last 20 years.
Have you? I mean, that's.
Well, I haven't been
is-
able to, because I haven't had the
That is
benefit
the
of
threat
it.
that exists, that
Absolutely.
at the end of useful, okay. I have a question, but it references previous, and so I'm not gonna ask
Previous
testimony,
here, or at another?
other.
Oh, okay, alright, yeah.
I have the question though, and I do want it to be noted, because I feel that after a decision is made, I feel the question to be just.
Okay, so are you gonna be coming back to?
I can. Sure.
Okay, we're gonna need you to, because we have to answer the question about the exhibits and documents being rendered. Okay. Yeah. Tom was just pointing out that you have another question pending that he didn't know the answer to, so he.
Oh, I've forgotten that already. I got involved in that. Oh, Carol's, I'm sorry. I'll write that on the back of my hand.
I actually have another follow-up that I
Okay.
can talk to you about later.
Okay.
Did you have anything else, Mike?
Right now, I'm okay.
Okay. Alright.
Well, let me put it on the record. The other thing I was hoping you could help us with is if you run your numbers with assumptions about perhaps possible loss of property value of the other properties in your district. So if you lost 10%, how would that shake out?
I haven't run the numbers.
Just the person providing testimony. Just the person that's testified.
I got a question, isn't it?
Okay.
I think there's a property. Is it not true, once the wind turbines, if they were built, makes property value go up instead of down?
I'm not a property value person. I don't have any training or experience in that area. I don't feel qualified to answer that question for you. I can only tell you about the value of the turbine itself and what it's valued with the state laws the way they are now. I'm not that real estate guy.
Alright. Any other questions from the zoning board members?
I will ask, and we can get to that. A turbine on a property is taxed as real property, as personal property, through this wind energy device valuation IDOR document.
I believe it's as commercial.
Okay.
And actually, even on the tax rolls, they even split it out from the rest of the commercial and actually call it wind farm.
Okay. However, placing this on a location doesn't change the soil factor that we have discussed in length.
Correct.
So there's no increase in EAV associated with the land that it resides on.
Absolutely not.
So we're simply increasing, the land value increases 0,
Yes,
and we're taxing through this wind energy device valuation formula
yes,
for the turbine.
yes.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
And we had to figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from the zoning board?
Yeah, do you know how close to the Ford County line the turbines have been placed?
I'm driving up the line right now, I'm kind of driving that road. Okay. Probably closer than you want them. I would say less than your current setback. I don't know what their setback is. I believe whatever their setback is to a road, whatever, if it's 1.1 or 1.3 times the height that you have to be set back from a road, I believe that's the setback that was applied. I don't know that they had an ordinance on the books when they built that said, thou shalt not build, within 1,500 foot of the county line. I think it was, we've got this county's ours. Our ordinance says you can build up to so many feet of the roadway. I believe they've done it. Now, I think they were I don't think there's cases where it infringes on a residence, but I shouldn't even have said it because I can't guarantee that. I'll take that back. Strike that from the record. The part that says, I don't know that they got too close to a residence on the other side of the line. I think they shouldn't have, but I don't know.
Any other questions from the zoning board?
I still reserve on that one.
Right. Got that noted. Okay.
Do I get a little closing? Is there a little closing piece? Didn't I
That's
hear people?
later.
Oh, okay.
That's later. Yes. Later.
I want to say one more thing on safety, but it's not the time I want to.
All right, any other units of local government, school districts? Provide testimony? All right, we're looking at 9:30, and I'm assuming we're gonna have some testimony.
About 10 minutes, Brenda.
All right. Good with going forward? Okay.
Guess I better be sworn in.
Yep. Okay, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give in this case now on hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Philip Lutkehans, Lutkehans. Couple things. I know, as you know, I represent the UCLC. And people have asked where the UCLC is on this ordinance. And honestly, we are not taking a position on the amendment to oppose it at this time. We will, however, do whatever is necessary to defend the record of the previous ZBA hearing on zoning case ZT-3-16. That is the position of the UCLC. We do have two exhibits that we would like to introduce. First is UCLC Exhibit 1. I think there's one for everybody.
Okay, Phil, could you tell everyone for the record what UCLC stands for?
Yeah, I'm
Got
sorry.
new zoning board members.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the United Citizens of Livingston County. As many of you know, we were an organization that has been very active in the wind turbine issue over the past several years, including the past hearings and including the previous zoning text amendment of, I guess, probably almost last year now. What you have in front of you, I just want to, is the evidence that was, and I know it was submitted at a prior hearing, but we're submitting it again, of safety manuals for GE, as well as the Nordex and Vestas all being at 500 meters or 1,640 feet. We think that is the minimum, absolute minimum from a safety standpoint. I know this ordinance, I think, is at 1,600. I think Mr. Schultz mentioned he would recommend 1,640. The UCLC is very strong about the 1,640 as far as, and that has to be the absolute minimum from a safety standpoint. The other thing we have in front of you, and I know we've been asked about this particular issue, is UCLC Exhibit 2. One of the issues has come up, you know, we fought very, very hard in the last zoning text amendment for only a 50-foot movement of the wind tower. I think the original proposal was for 250 feet. At some point, the suggestion was that 100 foot was more palatable or more reasonable to the wind energy companies. What you have in front of you is, in essence, what would happen if you moved the proposed wind turbines in Pleasant Ridge, the number of feet listed on top of each sheet. So what you'll see is the first page is just really nothing's moving, so it's not really, it's at 0 feet movement, so you really wouldn't start there. The second page is if you moved wind turbines 50 feet. The point is that those at 41, there would be a number of them that would go over 41. And 41, as we know, is kind of the nighttime limit that we've been fighting over.
These are noise levels.
Yeah, I'm sorry, these are noise levels. So the 41 decibels, and I think this is I don't remember what octave band, but this is an example of, you would have some that would move slightly over. It's not a huge number. We think that we could plan for that, or future people could plan for that by looking at it. But if you moved one, if you take let's say 0.20, about 10 down, 8 down. If you move one turbine, it would go up 41.1. If you move one turbine towards it, if you moved all 5, it could go up to 41.2. If 5 turbines moved up to 50 feet, you would have some difference, not a huge amount, but there would still be some. When you go to the next page, it's at 100 feet. You have the turbines that are over 40, pretty much over 40.6. To start with, if you move all 5 100 feet, or even 100, or 1 or 2 100 feet, now you come to this issue where more and more are slightly over the 41 decibel level. As you get down to 150, 200 feet, or 150 and 200 feet, pretty much you move one, 250 feet closer, a 41 is going to go over. You move a 49, it's going over. Even the 40.5s, you move one terminal, 150 feet, it is going over the level, or it's the maximum. And if you're at 250 feet, all of these turbines that start out at 40.5 all go over the 41.0 level, or all except 3 of them. So this was the information we based our feeling on, that to 100 feet we can live with, but at 250 was just way too much. And now I know we're not talking about 250 right now, we're talking about the difference between 50 and 100, but this was the information we had and thought we could plan for as a community if something was moved. So those are really the only two things I wanted to talk about tonight, but I wanted you to have the information, especially as it related to the UCLC's positions. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
What do the points represent? I mean, if there's a name by it, is that individual residence?
It was the individual's residence. I think it was related to a particular person. Mr. Slagle came up with this, but I think that was a particular residence, and that's how we were identifying it.
So if there's no name there?
If there was no name, it was a residence, but I think honestly, if I look at this, these may have been people who are plaintiffs in the UCLC litigate, or the interveners in the litigation of Pleasant Ridge. Excuse me, I have another. Actually, honestly, John DeShell, there are people he knew. That's really all it is. These are all residences.
They're all residents?
Yes.
Okay.
So these are noise levels, you're saying?
These are all noise decibel levels.
From the turbines?
Yes. And 41 is kind of the, as we found in the prior hearings, and it's in the ordinances, the IPCB regulations, 41.0 is kind of at the nighttime limit that is the maximum for that particular octave band. Is it 500 or 1,000 in this one?
Yes. 1,000.
Well, this is the 1,000 octave band.
So let me ask this question.
Yes, sir.
When you came up with this, who came up with the noise levels for this?
That was done as part of a computer program that was done and used, that all the wind energy companies used, and we, John Slagle also had the ability to use and has operated that program, the computer program, and came up with these numbers. And these were numbers that, I mean, other than the moving, these are all numbers that were part of that Pleasant Ridge. I keep doing that because I have a case Pleasant Ridge, I'm so sorry.
I just kind of wonder how you based, if you roll down the window of your car and drive down the road, what would your noise level be?
Depends how close you are. I mean, these are all.
Sitting with your fan on your house?
No, it depends. It would be much louder than a fan in your house. These are all at levels of, most of these people are over 2,000 feet already. Some of these are 2,500 feet. These were the proposed distances in the Pleasant Ridge. That's where these spots are. So like, let's say take the top, .219 Randall Fair. His house was under that ordinance, under that proposal, was going to be at 41.2 decibels.
Okay, and how many
At
feet?
2,000 feet.
It depends. I can't tell you exactly how many feet Randall's house was, but it was somewhere in that 1,800 to 2,200 square foot or something like that. All these are, as you go further back, some of these are further.
What? No, I'm saying, how many feet away from the turbine was it?
Well, it was over 1,600 because that was the minimum we were dealing with, but it was probably closer to 2,000 at that distance. And some of these down at 40.5 were probably 2,400 square feet,
And then your health and safety thing you come up with, I mean, I know what the wind turbines say, but I should look at this, and I say, what's me out to get killed on the highway with a car as the wind turbine comes down on top of me? How do you base that?
A wind turbine coming down on the car?
Yeah, blade, no, a wind turbine hit me in the middle of the field.
In the middle of the field? I think the minimum from a safety distance is the 1640. That's
Right.
the minimum we've ever heard.
But you got more chance of getting killed, I'm saying, am I right? On a highway?
I would not be able to tell you that answer. I'm gonna pull Mr. Moran, it's out of my league.
I'm just trying to say, the odds of one of these killing somebody is.
I guess there's two issues, and everybody needs to understand this. We've talked a lot about safety, and I don't want to get into the other issues, but there are a lot of other issues. If you go to the other zoning text amendment hearings, and I'm trying not to bring in Schomer's testimony, because it is what it is, and
You may get to.
I may have to at some
Yeah.
point. I mean, honestly, at some point I may have to, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. But there is testimony that the prior text amendment relied upon of 3250, and there was a reason for it in the record. From noise standpoint and a noise standpoint. This is, however, just IPCB regulations.
Right.
This is strictly that, not nuisance, which is a completely different issue. And nuisance, you can't measure noise. I mean, you can't measure by a decibel level. It's a different issue, and we've had testimony previously about that.
And you're getting at, it's on page 10 of amended ordinance. I guess I'm asking this question for the benefit of the ZBA members that are new, and why you're showing this, using this exhibit. It's section N, under,
Yes, section N, one of the original text amendments that this committee recommended and the board passed only allowed a 50-foot movement of turbines after they were sited. The Ag Zoning Committee, and I'm not sure, I've heard the county board voted on this, I don't really remember them doing it, but I know the Ag Zoning Committee recommended this ordinance to you, and the recommendation of 50 feet to 100 feet is all I'm talking about in UCLC Exhibit 2. That's all I'm discussing.
Did you not say you're okay with 100 feet?
Yes. I'm just saying, one of the things we pushed very hard for was 50. At this point, we're willing to live with 100, and this is kind of why. There's not a huge change between 50 and 100, but the 250, there's a huge change. Does that make sense?
Okay.
any other zoning board members? Any units of local government or school district? Any parties represented by an attorney? Any other interested parties with a question from Mr. Pulaski?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, that IPC, what does that stand for?
The Illinois Pollution Control Board standards.
Okay, and the noise pollution level is above 41?
It's nighttime, it's the 1,000 octave band, but yes. That's the one that seems to always be the one that's a trigger point for wind turbines. That wind turbines will be over. Or will butt up against it.
And they don't want that 41 dB or decibel level to be exceeded by a wind turbine within 1,600 feet?
Within, at any level. I mean, they could be
Okay.
3 miles. The question was asked me how far these particular ones are, but it doesn't matter. It could be next door, it could be 3 miles. That's just, and that's not just wind turbines, that's your normal business, whatever it may be.
I didn't see the page, but
Yeah.
how close do you gotta get till you get to 44 decibels? And I'm picking, and the only reason I'm picking that number, because 44 decibels is gonna be twice as loud as 41 decibels.
I do not have
Okay.
that information on that. None of the proposed Pleasant Ridge wind turbines were close enough to get to 44.
I mean, I don't know if everybody understands that a decibel's a logarithmic scale. And
Okay,
eight-
again, you
yeah,
gotta keep it to
yeah.
questions. If you
But
want to
just-
present testimony, you'll have your chance to do that.
That's why I was looking to see how close you had to get before you
I
done it.
don't
Okay.
have that information.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, any other interested parties with a question for Mr. Lieutenant? Okay.
No, you're not allowed.
So you have three manuals, right? Does what were they, Vestas, Nordex, and
GE, yes.
What size turbine was that?
At the time, the GE was the 400 foot. I think it was the one that Pleasant Ridge was.
1.6? Because the bigger one, do you have any for bigger turbines? 'Cause-
I do not, no.
So wouldn't bigger turbines have bigger setbacks?
They could.
So there might be a movable scale for setback.
I could understand that, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other interested parties with questions? Anyone from the county with questions?
We don't have any questions, thank you.
Other zoning board members?
Well, this is what GE came up with for this noise thing I keep talking about. It depends on the blade pitch, it depends on the wind. This is what, how do they come up with this?
This has nothing to do with noise. What you have in front of you in UCLC Exhibit 1 is only,
No, this is noise I'm talking about.
okay. I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. I don't mean to.
You referenced GE.
You're referencing this sheet I gave you on GE.
Right.
This is a safety only. This isn't
Okay,
a turbine
well, I'm
fault.
talking about this here, the noise
Okay.
level, sorry.
Yes.
When you change blade pitch, you change the wind, you can change decibels.
Yes, this is based upon the maximum that, first of all, my understanding of wind turbines is they're regulated, they can only go so fast, okay? There's a maximum that they will let them run at. This is based upon that maximum rate of speed, and the GE, or in this case it was GE, it was the GE model, and what that could cause at any given moment, based on an hourly rate. Now, you're right, it's not gonna be 41 decibels all night. Sometimes it might be 34, sometimes it might be 38. But as a zoning, or as a planning board, and as a safety, you're trying to plan for the worst case scenario.
Right.
That's what this is the worst case scenario on any given, for that particular turbine.
See, I didn't know they planned on the worst speed with everything else.
Yes, this is the max.
This is the max.
Huh?
This is the max.
This is the max, and that's what, that's what we were measuring, at least in Pleasant Ridge, was the max, because some nights are gonna be a little less, some during the day are gonna be less. And daytime standards are different than nighttime standards. And unfortunately, many of you have had to learn that along with me over the last several years. I see Mr. Cornell shaking his head, yeah. So, that's what I know.
I'm just learning all this, so
Unfortunately, we need the supplemental information.
I know.
Yeah, I didn't know how they based this, there's nothing telling how it was based or anything, or.
There's so much evidence out there that exists for this. You better explain this.
That we've had the benefit of hearing
Yes.
and know without having. Okay, any other zoning board members with a question? All right, thank you. All right, it's 10 till 10. I think that's long enough for tonight. So we need to recess, but we need to set some dates.
I got calendars of meetings, scheduling calendars, and those,
I've had a request brought to my attention that we set at least 2, maybe 3 potential future meetings.
One would be the 7th, correct? That'd be our regular meeting.
that is your regular meeting, that is on the 7th, that is a week from today.
And what do we have on the plate for that?
Well, if you'd like to pack some study, man, I'm gonna give it to you right now. You have 2 zoning cases, you have a variance case, you have a special use involving a Valley View Industry Court.
Okay, so Valley View may take some time.
Well, it's gonna take some time, I'm not sure.
Mike.
It could take half an hour to 45 minutes, but then it'll take longer if there's people wanting to come in and try to make that.
Half hour, 45 minutes, just for them to present, right?
Well, we'll take lesser than that to present, but I'm assuming they have some questions. I'm trying to put in some questions timelines.
What about the other case?
It's gonna take some. It has some unique features to it, so it's gonna take, half an hour, maybe less than that, but going on to conservative, you're probably looking at an hour and 15 minutes, hour to hour and 15 minutes for both cases
For
possibly.
these 2? All right, what's your thoughts on other dates? Let's assume that we might not recess this meeting to the same night as our other ZBA meeting. What are other nights that are available? Let's see what we've got first. Okay, so the 13th and 14th are out. When's the county board meeting at the night that we would?
County board meeting on the 14th.
That'll be the 14th, okay. All right, I know the 12th is out for me, so that week other than Monday and Friday, maybe not looking so good. Want to look at the following week, starting on the 18th?
Was we looking September 11th? That was okay for you, right?
It's okay, Mondays are never great days for meetings, but there's other things I have to read, I can adjust, but. Yeah, if you have thoughts on the 11th, speak up, are you open?
I'm open.
I'm open.
Okay, so we wanna look for maybe it possible on the 11th?
This would be the recess.
The following week, I'm assuming Fridays are out for everybody. Saturday,
Oh, yeah, especially during football season.
Okay.
I'm not worried about Bears.
All right, look in the week of the 18th.
Okay.
That would be okay. 18th?
Well, look in the week of the 18th. I don't know, on Monday, I'd prefer not to do Monday that week. Tuesday, Thursday,
I'm hoping I'm in the.
in the field.
In the field, but it doesn't.
When?
Don't need to
Oh,
hear.
what day? September?
September 18th.
No.
You're further north than I am.
Wishful thinking. Nice thought.
He's got higher productive soil.
Yeah, that's right.
Keepers, that's,
You don't know that.
19th.
yeah, the map tells us so, Rich.
You want to see yield.
I got you pegged at a 126.
When's your day that you're not here, Richard? The second Tuesday, or second Thursday?
No, Thursdays, I can't be here on the 14th, 28th.
Okay, the 21st will work for you?
Yep.
How's that look for everybody else?
I will be in Chicago. Apologize. Sorry.
Okay.
You're fired.
Okay.
Sorry.
That was short, but.
Jim, you're on the 19th, you're back to the 19th, or did you add the 19th?
We didn't add the 19th. I guess the 20th, Wednesday.
If we have to, I can have my partner cover, that's fine. If the 21st does the day, I can find, since our case is done, I mean, I can certainly have someone else involved would be here if that works. Although, no, he'll be in Chicago with me. It's the municipal league conference. I'm an idiot, sorry.
20th?
20th?
Are you leaving to go to
Yeah,
Chicago?
yeah, my presentation's at 9 o'clock Thursday
All right,
morning.
all right.
Sorry. I guess I can spend the night and then go, but.
I mean, I guess if everybody else can do Monday the 18th, I'll adjust my day again.
So
Might
that's
be
what
at
day we're
7:30
looking
though. At 7:30 would work better for me on Mondays, but.
The 18th, 7:30?
Right.
As a potential.
That's the one that I'm anticipating that that's where there may need to be some time to put together the findings of fact. Recommendations based upon what happens at the meeting on the 8th. I'm kind of assuming that,
Yeah, 2 more meetings.
some more meetings and
And then-
deliberation.
Okay.
So I don't know, if you get done on the 11th, great, you can deliberate on the 18th, and then it needs to be, the paperwork together, I need some time for that.
I don't know what to assume. I have no idea how many more people are gonna testify. There may be a number. I don't know if we'll finish it in 2 nights. I don't know.
So we're looking at the 7th, the 11th, and the 18th?
The 7th is our regular.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any way we can resume on that one? And finish out the night since we're all gonna be here?
I mean, if our regular meeting lasts longer than what we expect, it might be here late and not get a lot accomplished, so I don't know. I'm a little hesitant to do that just because of the unknowns. And that could waste a lot of people's time coming and then we don't get much accomplished or done. So the last week of September, do we want to look at a date there or skip to October?
Is this for
Assuming-
another, so you're saying 11, 18, and then now you're looking more?
Yeah, no, like Tom's saying, assuming we might get done, so by the time we're done on the 18th, we might be done, and then,
And then just do it on a regular zoning meeting in October.
well,
If it's just a matter of time, Chuck and I need some time to put the paperwork together. And, yeah, if you look at it, it could go quickly, it could be done on the regular meeting. When is the regular meeting, by the way?
October 5th.
Yeah.
Thursday, October 5th.
Between
Will you
the
be here
18th
for
and
that?
October 5th, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what we might have in October?
We just push something back to it.
I have a pending case that you're not gonna accept, that I'm gonna have a talk to the applicant, because it's not fit to be brought before you at this point in time, so.
So we might not have anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we push something back to October?
Well, we pushed back, Raymond Co-op, when's that coming back?
Yeah.
That was real.
That's-
You'd had Greenmount Co-op,
But they're not.
if they were ready, they were supposed to come back and talk to you in October along with the Senate, correct?
Yeah, okay. And you don't think either are ready?
I mean,
You don't know?
they're a month out, so it's kinda hard to tell if they're gonna be
Yeah.
ready or not.
You can always see where we're at too, with the other two things.
Yeah, we can leave that as an option. The 5th might be our next meeting, our next meeting after the 18th. And at that point, we can pick a date. So let's just leave it as we're recessing, well, somebody needs to make a motion that we're recessing to September 11th.
7 o'clock?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion. You said it's September 11th, 7 o'clock.
Do you have, is it Monday?
I asked
That at
7:30 to
7:30?
18th.
The 18th is at
I'll make
7:30. Is the 11th at 7 or 7:30?
No, on the 11th.
Sasha?
7, she said.
Oh, 7.
11 to 7. 18 to 7:30.
I'd rather have 7:30.
Okay. We owe people who have our books.
Excuse
me? Oh, well, that's true.
All in favor?
Well, no, I said we owe people, we have our books. And other people are there, you know.
I'm the guy that wanted to see you in the courtroom, that'll still show up. All the gray hairs will make fun of me when I do it.